Hello everyone, very good evening to one and all present here. Continual and advanced learning launch of SA College of Arts and Science. Welcome you all for this 7-day refresher program on management business administration during current and post crisis scenario. We have a series of lectures from different experts on their fields, namely like marketing, HR, finance, operations, production, supply chain management, information technology, and much more to add on. So today we have Mr. Mishra, senior consultant from ITCOT, will take us through on business current and post-crisis scenario. I request everyone to go through his ideas, expertise on business present and post-crisis scenario. And after the session, or else even during the session, you can post your questions through YouTube channel so that the same will be answered by the respective expert on the next day before 12. The link for that particular YouTube channel will be sent it across to your WhatsApp group. Since we have received more than 1100 plus participants, we couldn't connect through Zoom map or some other application, so we thought of going for YouTube channel and requesting you all your support for the entire 7 days. The session will go by at the end of the day, that is 5 to 5:30 p.m. So requesting you all to view the lectures, view the videos of the expertise, and post your realistic questions so that it can be like a more interactive session. So with this note, I thank everyone for your support, and I request Mr. Mishra, Senior Consultant ITCOT, will take us through the session on business present and post-crisis scenario. Thank you, everyone.
Good day, friends. It's a privilege and an honor to be part of this online event. I thank SA Group of institutions to give this opportunity to me to speak to an audience who are now locked down in their respective homes or offices across the city and the state. We are all in here to discuss this topic on business during the present and post COVID 19 pandemic scenario. I have, over the last 3 decades, worked as a consultant with ITCOT Consultancy and Services Limited, and primarily in the MSME sector, and have spent considerable amount of time training and building capacity of entrepreneurs and enterprise. With this background and work experience, I believe I will qualify myself to share with you some of my personal views and experiences. Let me tell you, I'll be hence sharing my views and that are borrowed heavily from others in different fields of practice. Uh, this talk uh, can be best described as a personal judgment of the present and future scenarios that are emerging or are likely to emerge in the days to come and months to come. The COVID 19 pandemic is having a severe effect on the world economy, which is expected to contrast by 3% in year 2020, which is much worse than the 2008-9 financial crisis. As per the International Monetary Fund uh, World Economic Outlook, uh, India's growth is expected to dip to 1.9% in 2020. As countries implement necessary quarantines and social distancing practices to contain the pandemic, the world has been put in a great lockdown. The magnitude and speed of collapse in activity that has followed is unlike anything experienced in our lifetime. And what we are seeing is something uh, uh, which has never happened in our lifetime, and perhaps mm, not even a few generations up there. Despite the fact that humans have made tremendous progress in terms of technological growth or even scientific growth, there is one area where mm, that has not been able to surpass, and that is the supremacy of nature. Nature has always proved much more powerful than the human race, even though uh, there have been a lot of technological and scientific advancements and achievements. In spite of development in weather forecast techniques, disasters at many times cannot be prevented. In today's age, the natural calamities in the form of floods, famines, cyclones, earthquakes, tsunamis are mainly due to global warming. And yet, this lockdown, 21 days of 21 days, has already shown significant reversal in climate changes. We are told the water flowing through Ganga and Yamuna are almost drinkable in certain stretches of the river. Mm. So we can see that there are upsides and downsides to a mm, event like this, uh, to a pandemic like this. Uh, I'm happy that this event is being attended by a large section of academicians, business practitioners, and students. All this is being done when India is entering the second stage of now mm, a 40-day lockdown, mm, which will now continue perhaps till the 4th of May. Uh, Business landscape has radically changed in the past few weeks due to coronavirus. The majority of stories people are hearing concern business closing down or layoff of laying off of workers. Mm, some small businesses are uniquely suited to the COVID-19 crisis and have seen an uptick in demand. With all kinds of businesses creatively learning to adapt to coronavirus, it should come as no surprise that some traditional business have seen some success in the new landscape as well. Business that help people social distance themselves from others, and retailers that help people stock up for eating and drinking at home are primary examples. Mm, I'll just try to see, or rather, share with you. Now, let us really look at some of the businesses, especially small businesses, uh, that seem to be working at this point of time when everyone is locked down and when the economy has come to a standstill. Um, Let us look at this cleaning services. Of course, cleaning services are marked by companies like pest services, pest control services, and things like that. But then pest control services have now gone into basically what we call uh, uh, got into sanitizing offices, homes, hospitals, isolation centers, and many of these kind of things which are uh, currently people are really scared of of going out and touching things. So cleaning service is clearly one of the mm, areas which is definitely uh, trying to mm, create a space for itself during these difficult times. Then let us look at this neighboring or the neighborhood grocery stores. Perhaps before the corona episode, mm, people were freely going around to large malls and markets, supermarkets to buy their groceries and vegetables, or using an online uh, ordering tool to order such. Now, suddenly with Corona coming in, I think the uh, uh, these grocery stores were all closed basically after the lockdown happened, and it was only the neighborhood small grocery stores or the Malige Kade, as we call them, have been coming to the rescue of the citizens of the city. Although all these organizations have been asked to uh, uh, maintain the social distancing aspect, and these small shops have uh, very clearly done this by adapting themselves to the current scenario and maintaining a good social distancing uh, as well as maintaining the crowd that normally queues up in front of the shop. They have been pretty good in times of this, and it's good to see that these shops are adapting themselves to the current scenario. Then delivery services or the online delivery services like Swiggy, Zomato, and Uber Eats and things like that. These companies, though in the first phase of the shutdown or the lockdown was were not allowed to. But gradually, as days passed, we could see that they started organizing their delivery services um, into time slots so that people all, could stay in back in their homes and then start ordering online. And this is something which is going to see a lot of traction in the coming days and months because people are already scared of moving out and they don't want to mix up uh, with the population outside. And they just to maintain that social distance, I think they would probably prefer ordering their meals and food online to these services. Then one typical thing that I observed uh, while walking into these grocery shops, um, the counters normally where you have this ready-to-eat foods like the snacks, the biscuits, and things like they were completely wiped off from those shelves. I mean, every time I went there, I found that there are very limited supplies of these packed items, which are normally used at homes during this lockdown period. So there appears to be a big demand for these canned and jarred, which are normally contained in a jar. That's why we call it jarred goods. And there seems to be quite good demand for this kind of products. Then, of course, with people stuck inside their homes for over 15, 20 days now, mm, people find it extremely difficult to spend their time, and the whole family is around. So, uh, there are frictions happening within the families. Then there are opportunities also arising. people try to gather around and then keep themselves engaged with what we call indoor games, like the board games, and mm, that appears to be a good business that is trying to create a niche for itself in this space. Mm. So is the fitness equipment companies, where gyms are closed down, where gymnasiums are not accessible to the people now. Uh, People try to use their own gym equipments or gym equipments. Uh, so that is one area which is definitely looking up good. Well, another interesting area is landscaping and yard care companies. Landscape companies basically, we have seen in urban areas, commercial establishments maintaining big gardens, and these companies are actually trying to take care of these, and so are the homes. Homes having space where they can maintain a small kitchen garden. These companies can are trying to basically step in and offer their services, and are seem to be doing good business. So overall, you can see some of these opportunities are also working well on the ground, even during these times of uh, emergency or in these times of difficulty. We hope there will be many more opportunities which will be coming up, surfacing as the days goes by. And the government is already considering offering certain or opening certain services, uh, uh, opening certain services, so opening some of the services. I think that is what is exactly required uh, in a society which is locked down, and an event which is unprecedented in the history of human race. So as we see, we have come to a virtual standstill after the lockdown has happened. And it is not only India which has locked itself down. It is 200 plus countries who have been affected by this COVID-19 pandemic. And almost every country has locked themselves down. I mean, the citizens have been warned to be inside, and I guess that is the only way to break the mm, infection chain. If one has lived in a fragile economy, let us say lived in a community hit by a natural disaster like we had in Chennai, the, uh, or in Tamil Nadu, or the whole of southern India, basically hit by tsunami, uh, or let us say the recent floods that we had in Chennai. Uh, they were temporary disruptions to the life of the people living in that region. But what we are seeing today is not temporary disruption alone. It is a disruption which is crossing the length and breadth of the country, of the many countries together, and not only countries, even continents. Countries after countries have been affected by this. And we have never seen this in our lifetime. And with this lockdown happening simultaneously with several countries, we are seeing the entire economy coming to a standstill for the whole of the country, which is something uh, never seen before. We had a lot of other issues, or rather mm, such disasters happening earlier. Let us say, if I can recall, we had in Madhya Pradesh the Union Carbide chemical factory disaster, which led to poisonous gases coming out and killing many people within the city. Or let us say this Chernobyl nuclear plant in Russia, which again uh, created havoc within the people in that particular region. Not only people, the flora, fauna, everything was affected because it was a nuclear explosion of the factory. Now, with these kind of temporary disruptions, uh, it is only a few days of disruption which leads the economy uh, to get unsettled, and then finally, as things improve over the days, uh, economies become or tend to become better. But what we are seeing today is something altogether different. I mean, this is something which has never happened before, and that is why we call it as unprecedented. We see all of a sudden everything has come to a standstill, right from the transportation to anything that you name it has come to a standstill. People are just indoors, and everything has come to a standstill, be it rural areas or urban areas. So with these disruptions, it has brought inconsistencies in several things. Let us say the public policy in terms of health policy uh, that we have in place today, uh, which talks about isolation, separation, or maintaining social distance. Uh, and on the other hand, we have the economy, which is uh, which is about uh, which is kind of right opposite to what the public policy on health says. Economy or the society are wired uh, to basically get integrated. Everything is connected there. And the second inconsistency, the second inconsistency, I would say, is between individual behavior and collective behavior during these hard times. You have uh, lockdowns announced by the government, which is being strictly enforced. There is a big difference between individual behavior and collective behavior. And of course, the third consistency is inconsistency is what the national governments want to do nationally, and what is their global responsibility. Uh, the biggest worry is if this pandemic, which is already affecting 200 plus countries. But fortunately, the one good thing is the third world countries are less affected in terms of the absolute numbers of COVID affected patients. And God forbid if this spreads, God forbid if this virus spreads to some of the third world countries, and and that can be really dangerous, taking human deaths to unprecedented numbers and creating a lot of misery for the whole world. Uh, this is kind of a situation where, or kind of an interesting situation about this crisis, is it is a simultaneous destruction of both consumption and production, of both demand and supply. And when you get both hitting hard, they feed onto each other. today, if you um, and today, if you look at some of the examples of the shops which have, be it airlines, uh, be it a hairdresser saloon which is next to your home, or even a small restaurant which has been running, they had to all abruptly stop their functioning. So there is suddenly uh, no markets and there is absolutely no production. Mm. Mm. Let us take, for example, the travel industry, basically, where people, uh, because of the mandate of maintaining social distance or uh, locking them down inside their homes, uh, people have stopped traveling. Mm. And uh, they consume less of this, so they don't go on travel, and there's a massive hit to revenue. Uh, and what is the quickest way of cutting revenues or cutting costs is basically laying off people. That is, you stop giving their salaries, or you say your work is done. And once these people are out of jobs, their incomes are squeezed, and they are the consumers, uh, and they are the consumers of this travel which we are talking about. So it is something which is unbelievable that on one side you have the uh, production coming to a halt, and on the other side, revenues coming to a halt. Mm. In the last 3 weeks, US alone has seen 17 million, or 10% of the labor force, are forced into unemployment. Um, uh, mm, the unemployment levels are going very high, and it appears, and as some people say, it may even touch 30% in the months to come. Now, this is something very, very difficult to comprehend, and it can lead or leave the country in real spot of bother. Imagine you have a viable business. Let us say you have run a very successful small restaurant in your neighborhood, and suddenly mm, uh, you find that for the time being you cannot open it, you cannot run it. uh, and let us say, for the time being, you are locked down and hence you cannot open the restaurant. So the immediate problem that can happen to this restaurant is it will not have enough cash to run its business, because there are no customers walking into the restaurant. Now, let us say in the event mm, the hotel or the restaurant opens up, and people get back to the restaurant, since it's a popular restaurant, and then start having their regular meal in the restaurant. So the company or the restaurant will have a definitely a crisis, because it was so long closed, and it did not have any revenues and did not have any cash with it. So the only option left to this restaurant is to seek some liquidity to fund its requirement to run the restaurant on a day-to-day basis. Now, Now, let us say it goes to a bank and then asks for some and explains to it the situation, and then bank agrees that it will give this money uh, uh, to tide over this temporary problem. Uh, then it is fine. They are into business and they continue their business. But let us assume that the bank refuses to pay or pay this loan that this restaurant is seeking. Uh, mm, and the restaurant has a lot of fixed expenses like the rent it pays, then it has the goods that it has to buy or the items that it has to buy and things like that, and salaries it has to pay to the people who are the bank says no, I don't have money or I cannot fund it. Then there is absolutely no choice left for the restaurant owner. He has to close down the business, and then the problem, liquidity problem, becomes the solvency problem. So in the days to come, the finance side will have a very important role to play in helping communities bridge through uh, the business community or the industry community to bridge through. And the good news is that the government and the central banks have realized that they need finance to play an important role as part of the solution. Uh, Part of the solution, and they are helping in this process. Yes, and that's of course a very different situation uh, uh, from what it happened during the previous financial crisis in 2008, 10, 8 and 9. So, what will the businesses do, or what are the opportunities the business have after the pandemic is cleared of this country? Well, it's very, very difficult to say at this point of time as to how long this pandemic will continue and whether we'll be seeing any improvement in the near future or even in the distant future. It's very difficult to very difficult to basically to guess at this point of time whether this pandemic will be cleared and businesses will be back to normalcy. So the whole exercise can run into several months before we see uh, any things happening, mm, any real movement happening in this ground. Uh, a financial crisis like that happened in 2008-9 is something like a heart attack. It hits you hard. It hits at the heart. If you don't deal with the heart, everything else stops and was uh, and can really affect the entire community. So we are trying to basically address this heart attack uh, by and people don't trust each other. Mm, in a scenario like this, uh, when the Reserve Bank comes and tells you that don't worry, I have a printing press below my uh, office and can take care of all your requirements, then it builds some kind of confidence in the system, and people start uh, collecting themselves and then try to address things um, which seem to have been broken by this pandemic. So it builds kind of a trust among the people and the community, business community, that yes, there is a government to support us, or there's a government agency, or the central bank or the Reserve Bank is there to help us out. So the COVID situation is something like you have multiple defects in your arms, limbs, everywhere, and then uh, trying to basically address only the heart of the only the heart will not really help. So what people are trying to do is to attend to those small defects that are happening in the arms or limbs and things like that. Um, and trying to get restarted as to address the change scenario. And in a scenario like this, restart is not instantaneous. We cannot just like that restart everything. See, there have been uh, enterprises for long, have been doing businesses for long, and then suddenly there is a stop in between, and then they have to restart all over again because the production has come to a halt, marketing has come to a halt, everything else has come to a halt. So they have to restart, and that is just not possible by just turning off the switch, like we switch on or switch off. Mm. So to make this happen, we'll have to sequence our activities in such a way that the post-crisis landscape has to be addressed with a series of activities or actions that can reboot the whole economy and help the industry to come out of this unprecedented situation. So post COVID-19, we'll have a very different scenario altogether. The business models are changing. The way business will operate might change, and we can very clearly see it in the case of educational institutions. In fact, what we are trying to do right now is an alternate as to the way we used to conduct seminars or webinars is getting slowly changed. In fact, I have seen in the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Some schools have started the classes with faculty at home and the teacher students in their respective homes logging onto computer apps which can deliver classroom sessions, and that is exactly what we are doing right now. And I feel this will be a kind of a new development which post COVID, I think this will develop into a new business model, and perhaps many organizations might look into this, or even simply will explore the possibilities of working from home, which is perhaps new to many of the industries in India today, and many will think of ways and means to operate in a scenario like this. And these are very challenging times, and I'm sure businesses will always look at ways and means of addressing this. And it has been historically there for every business to reinvent themselves, and that is what exactly they are trying to do. And perhaps this is a period by which they will lie low and they will try to adjust to all the changes that are occurring. Some are known, some are not known, and these changes can only help to replace or organize their reorganize the strategies. And in the midst of this lockdown, we are also seeing some events which are shocking, like in the last few days, we have seen uh, migrant workers who work in some of the major cities in the country, who travel from different states, and mostly from the eastern part of the country, where they mm, have migrated to different cities to work in different industries, are a set of people who want to come back to their homes despite this lockdown, with total disregard to social distancing and the precautions that are necessary to take for containing this infection chain. Now, these poses a lot of challenges for the district, for the administration of the country, administrative officials of the country, and even the common citizens. So, these and on the positive side, we see that states or districts have uh, planned their lockdown very effectively by uh, getting the services, citizen-led services, especially during lockdown when they are not supposed to move out of their homes. They are allowed to they are allowed to I mean they have collected all the supply chain players in the market and have kind of made the services available to the citizens through these efforts. Mm. Now, this is something which is on the positive side of the whole thing. So, a district administration is able to address with new methods by pulling in all the service providers to provide the citizens the services at their doorstep so that they maintain the lockdown and they are within their homes and whereas the services are delivered seamlessly. So that is how the opportunities actually shape up in these difficult times, and I'm sure companies or the entrepreneurs are really looking at ways and means of fitting themselves into the new change that is happening in the society, and this might go undergo a lot of changes in the days to come. And if the lockdown is going to be long enough, then I'm sure there will be many more changes that can be expected out of the emerging models that are coming out for the enterprises or the entrepreneurs. Businesses always tend to spring back, mm, looking at the different uh, opportunities and that is thrown open to them during such times. Um, they by virtue of running an enterprise, they always look at opportunities that mm, come in their way, and businesses always try to come around these kind of obstacles to uh, win the customers and do businesses as the situation demands. So we will see actually when things get to normalcy, uh, 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 we will see that a lot of these um, customers are getting back to the businesses which have uh, metamorphosed into new entities or into a different entity which has been able to provide them the required services. But one thing that we need to understand very well is uh, after the mm, after the program after the event or after the coronavirus is uh, brought into control, we will find that businesses, customers will get into activities which uh, fulfill their requirements then. So there will always be a pull and a push happening at the same time in terms of creating a space for themselves in the society. And the best part is everyone tries to the earth has enough for everyone, enough for everyone to enjoy its resources. So companies will tend to reposition themselves in the changing times, and I'm sure companies uh, will have a difficult time in getting back to the speed with which they were traveling. But then it is a matter of time before they get into, or they get into that motion, or that they get into that. At the same time, the customers who are supposed to be consuming things will also find it extremely difficult get back to the speed with which we were traveling, let's say before Corona happened. And same way, they will also take their own sweet little time to get back to normalcy. And this can happen by again correcting themselves, their way and means by which they can apportion the spending. Uh, as we go along, we'll find a lot of job losses. There will be a lot of revenue losses for the states, for the enterprises, for everybody, and they have to get back by restarting the activities in a manner which will slowly and steadily get back them the required uh, speed. So I'm sure organizations, uh, entrepreneurs, enterprises, consumers, all will tend to work towards that. Well, it is anybody's guess that the uh, time to get back into the uh, pre-corona speed, or pre-corona levels, uh, will be very, very difficult to achieve in the next few months. So it will be a trying time for every one of us to create that niche for ourselves, and make sure that we are more resilient and get back into the activities as we go along. So thank you for being part of this event. I'm sure I enjoyed doing this. It will be really a real nice thing to hear from you as to what are your thoughts on this, and share some of your thoughts, so that I can probably address them while we go along. So once again, thank you for listening and being a patient, giving me a patient hearing.